Thank you for staying at sea. And if you just joined us, you are right in time for the favorite part of the show, Our Views, where we get to discuss different issues that concern us and our different perspectives towards these issues. My name is Sandra Cope, and in studio, I am joined by my colleagues, Apollo Sarah and Agi Uwase. Ladies, it's good to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning. And what we are going to discuss today, and we posted this on our social media pages, and it says, should students be allowed to have smartphones at the school for e-learning? Should they be allowed to do this? And we had different reactions, but the government actually, they came yesterday. The government made a U-turn barely less than 24 hours after proposing to authorize the use of mobile phones by learners in schools and lifting the ban on visitation days. Addressing a press conference at the Ministry of Education and Sports offices in Kampala yesterday, the State Minister for Higher Education, Mr. John Muyingo, said the use of smartphones by learners within the school environment will be effected after government develops a policy that would guide the use of information and communication technology gadgets by learners. Now, the government on Wednesday, March 16th, had lifted this ban on COVID-induced school visitation ban and separately permitted students to use smartphones for classwork. That was on Wednesday, and then yesterday they recanted their statement. But in your opinion, do you think we are ready for this? Do you think so? What do you think? Are we ready for this? Smartphones at school?
I feel like we are not yet ready for this for so many reasons. But to start with, I feel like if they let students go to school with phones, it will bring on a lot of inferiority complex.
How so?
Because the students, I mean, we go to different students go to different schools, but we come from different backgrounds. There's students whose parents cannot afford to buy them smartphones, and then there's those that can afford to buy them smartphones. So what happens when you get to school and this student has a smartphone and this one doesn't? Will the school actually improvise? Is it the school that is going to buy them the smartphones? What are they going to do about the fact that some have smartphones and some do not? If it's for learning purposes, then the students who don't have smartphones will be left out in one way or another. And it's difficult to share a smartphone, I could say. Everyone wants to, keep your smartphone to yourself for particular reasons. It could be that you have some information that you wouldn't want your colleague to see. So honestly, for me, I feel like it's too early. They should lay better strategies before they put it into place.
But do you think it's too early because children were home for 2 years? Yes, and then because of the pandemic, and then we have this new abridged system.
Yes.
So people don't know what to do, and some schools don't have these notes. They have been waiting for these notes. So wouldn't it make it better to give them access? But before you answer that, Sarah, what are your thoughts on this?
I understand where Agi's concern comes from, and I absolutely agree with that. Her concern also lies with children who come from very impoverished backgrounds. Children who come from, and that's a big majority of youths or students in this country. Many of them are below the poverty line or living within the poverty line, and that puts those schools, say for instance the UPE schools in rural areas, at a disadvantage to schools in urban areas or people who come from better or well-off schools or whatnot. Actually, right now in some school systems, their students are allowed to take their phones. Yes. From senior 1 all the way to senior 6. You're allowed to take your phone. Some schools, it's even a requirement that you have to go with your phone, and they are allocated time within the day that they can use their phones. That is after class. But back to the point, I think we are not ready for it. However, if it was applied, it would definitely give a boost to a number of students who can afford it. Although, again, let's not neglect that it's going to leave those who cannot afford the smartphone behind. And it's also going to increase things like theft in schools, distractions in schools, and then also how do you monitor what the child is using their phone for? It's already a problem at home. So how are you going to monitor your child at school? How is the administration going to be able to monitor hundreds and hundreds of children and how they're using their information? The other concern is data. Is the school providing the data
if they're going to be
or Wi-Fi?
Can every school afford it, though?
Every school afford it though? So although there are many disadvantages to it, but I think there are also some pros to it, because children are able to, you know, learn ahead if they're using it properly, and that is a big if they're using their phones wisely, then they're definitely able to learn ahead, because many of us got introduced to the internet in university. I personally did got introduced to the internet and Google in university, and before I was like, where was this? Do you know how much it would have saved me if it was actually introduced at an earlier age, an earlier stage, I mean, in the school system? We need it. We just don't have the means for it. But I think it would be a very helpful tool, especially with this abridged curriculum, because we are way behind every other curriculum around the world.
Yes.
We are already lagging behind, so we need to catch up. And this hands-on system of where the teacher has to come and dictate the notes, or has to compile the notes, or has to write the notes, is wasting a lot of time, and it's going to keep us, our education system, even behind. So I think this was probably a desperate attempt to help us catch up with the rest of the world. It works, but then again, it's not applicable for everybody.
That's quite true. And this is why they came up with the digital agenda, yes, because of the pandemic and how we lagged behind. Uganda was one of the last countries, if not the last, to open schools.
The last country, yes.
Yes, to open schools. And according to Education Authority, the digital agenda, which is intended to address access to information and communications technology in schools, is envisaged to allow students to own mobile gadgets such as smartphones and tablets in schools as part of the e-learning tools. I beg your pardon. The development was confirmed by Dr. Jane Ega-Oko, the Director, Higher Technical and Vocational Education and Training at the Ministry, leading the technical team to develop the digital agenda. She said, we are developing the digital agenda, and one of the key areas is to access the internet to support learning. She added there are places with internet, but people do not have enabling equipment such as computers. The agenda will guide us on how we can make use of available equipment such as mobile phones to support e-learning and research. But like you said, Sarah, there are also disadvantages.
Yes.
We have things like cyberbullying, for example. And this is really, like, it's already an issue. So if you have that in schools, things like cyberbullying, how are we going to control that? And you know, kids can be mean to one another.
Yes.
They can really be mean. And if they have phones in school, you've seen, like, in the movies, someone takes maybe a video of someone at school, it goes viral, and the kid is just, they don't want to go to school, they feel out of place. Yes? So what are the ways in which we can counter this? Don't you think, like, schools need to, if they're going to adapt smartphones, they should also, like the way when we went into a pandemic, like, we're still navigating our way out of it, but mental health has really come to the forefront because of the pandemic. So things like cyberbullying should be tabled in school, because they are a thing, because they are going to open floodgates to so many things.
See, this is the thing. You cannot stop progress, you cannot stop development, you cannot stop people from wanting to upgrade in their lives. So this is something that we are going to have to mitigate along the way. But having to say that, oh, because cyberbullying, so let them not take their phones. Fine, you take the phones away, they're still going to physically bully each other. That is what was happening in our day when we didn't have phones in schools. One thing would happen and it spreads, not just in your school, neighboring schools. Next thing you know, the whole Uganda knows that Apollo Sarah did something so and so. You understand what I mean? So I don't think that having to not allow them take their phones to school is going to stop it. We just need to train them that it takes responsibility to have a gadget. To also now deliberately put in place classes where children are taught how to properly use their phones, the dangers of their phones, the dangers of cyberbullying. These actually should be incorporated in classes. They have general paper GP. These conversations should be included in that sector. So the ministry just needs to properly revise the structure of education. So instead of having general paper and you're bringing in random questions from history, literature, geography, and math, putting it in one paper, how about you put life skills in that paper and talk to children about these vices that can potentially harm them? And not only just that, there is social media, the danger of social media itself. These trends, TikTok, every other day we are seeing a trend that is killing children. Children are unknowingly harming themselves, putting themselves in harm's way, or even committing suicide and taking their own lives, thinking that it is fun to partake in these things. So it is conversations. We cannot stop our children from owning gadgets. I'm telling you, that pocket money, that small allowance, you get them. Children are now learning how to make ends meet and find a way to, you know, provide for themselves the things that their parents refuse to get for them. So if they're going to get gadgets or phones, let's teach them how to responsibly use them and not harm themselves. And also show them that it is actually a tool that can help you with your homework. That is the most important thing, because I think any child would want, in school, would want the formula, the shortcut to actually getting their schoolwork done. So if you tell them and show them that if you use this tool this way, you're going to be able to keep on top of your studies and even be able to multitask and, you know, find yourself and still have a social life, just use it the right way.
I agree. I also think, you know, sometimes you can be at work. Have you been like at work and you see this person who is just glued on their phone? They're supposed to be working, but they have zero phone etiquette because they didn't learn how to use this gadget.
Exactly.
So as a child, I feel if you teach a child that earlier on, then they'll be able to allocate their time
yes,
on what to do and when to do it. But let us look at...
Before you head into something else, Sandra, I would like to say that I feel like we are really moving ahead of ourselves as Uganda, because when the pandemic came on, they introduced e-learning, where students had to, you know, learn from home. And then, but it so happened that so many students could not actually get access to e-learning. It was only the privileged ones who had tabs, who had smartphones, and maybe their parents can actually be there for them while they are doing their e-learning back at home. So many students did not access e-learning. So how will it happen that now it will be possible, you know, when they get back to school?
This is a process where we are going to be forced to get out of our comfort zones and adapt.
Affording them is the problem.
I get that. But now there are smartphones that cost as low as 50,000 shillings. Or if you buy a second-hand one, at least. We cannot continue lamenting that we cannot afford this. We cannot continue lamenting to, you know, we don't, the minute you have children, you don't have the luxury. You don't have the luxury to say, but now it's a hopeless situation, because the world is moving at a very fast pace. And guess what? Our teenagers are 5 steps ahead of us. And they use our phones better than we do.
Yes,
they use our computers better than we do. So it is in our we are in a position where we should at least support them, where we should call on to the government. I understand the private sector, these are for parents who can definitely afford these things. They can. Some of them can afford to a higher extent, and others can afford to, you know, they struggle but are able to get there. Now let's look at the ones who are beyond underprivileged, the ones in the rural areas,
the most,
and those are the
majority.
That's the majority, exactly.
Yes.
So it comes down to the government not just only just improving the education sector, but going down to also talk about things like family planning. Don't have children if you're not going to be able to put them through an education system. Do you understand what I mean? That is where our problem starts from. The lack of family planning, things like poverty. So it goes down to grassroots problems that just, you know, that are interlinked into everything. So we need to we cannot afford to say we can't anymore. You guys, we have been shut down for 2 years.
But I feel like while we put that in place, let's at least for now, let them start with, maybe if they could buy tabs for the underprivileged kids back in school, a few of them, and you can improvise and work together and maybe afford to buy some smartphones for students. While the pandemic was going on, they talked about radios. We saw that not come into effect at all. Radios. And that is very cheap when you compare it to a smartphone, when you compare it to a tab.
Yes.
So what happens now?
Before we come back to that, and that has really been quite an issue of who can afford, why they can't afford. Let's look at other pros and cons of having smartphones at school, children having smartphones at school, and the benefits of banning personal mobile phones. We already talked about cyberbullying, and we also Sarah spoke about incorrect usage, and also cybersecurity. Yes, because there are so many predators out there and pedophiles, and cybersecurity can turn out to be quite an issue. Do they know this? Especially also for teenagers. Catfishing, yes.
Kidnapping.
Yes.
Oh my God.
All that, because they will get to post everything. Oh, I'm here now, I'm going to school now, I'm doing this. Yes, and that can really bring on some predators to come and harm the children. This is also an issue that we should take into account.
Teachers as well, they don't even have to come from far. It's just teachers in school.
Yes.
And theft, of course. If you have an expensive smartphone, then the child can be a target. They can be attacked maybe on their way from school, because they will know, oh, these kids, they are just easy targets because they know now they have smartphones. So you can imagine, because even us as adults, they steal our phones. We're always like, so theft is another thing to consider, and social stratification. This is social classes. Kids can just say, oh, these are the kids with the cool gadgets, those are the ones with the not so cool gadgets. So it can make students really feel uncomfortable also at school. And another thing that we need to consider also is cheating in exams.
No, why are you going with your phone to,
no, but
to
they could sneak them in. Listen, not allowed.
We were patted down like criminals entering examination rooms. Pop, open your puff, open your tie, undo your tie, remove your socks. It was serious? Like airport security, like they are patting you down for drugs.
But even while they were doing that, there's some students who actually managed to sneak them in.
There's
those who managed.
No.
Yes.
No. I highly doubt that.
You didn't see that happen?
In university, again, like I said, it was like airport security. When the method dictator just says chui, they tell you strip down. You strip down everything.
Like step away from your clothes.
Step away from your bag.
Well, that can be handled then.
That can be in the case of where, for instance, because I did IT, in the event where you have to do your examination in a computer laboratory, there you cannot, there are chances that the child knows how to hack the system. Kids are crazy. Can hack the system.
Exams.
And then cheat in the exams.
Yes.
But to walk into an examination room with mobile phones, that one I highly doubt will be accepted.
But they can share information from different, they called it Kasasi, something like that.
Sasi.
Like Sasi, like you'd get it from a friend in a different school. So now imagine in an event that they actually have phones, that means they could share the questions. If the other school,
but I guess it all boils down to cybersecurity as well, because if you have the exams, then you have all this like security. Yes. I'm sure Sarah knows, she's the IT queen.
You see, there are many things that could be applied. They could, switch off the intercom networks so that they do not access data or cannot share any information or whatever the case may be. But those are nitty-gritties that will be, put in place when this is actually happening. But then again, let us be reminded or keep in mind that there are some schools, not only just international schools, but some secondary schools in Kampala that actually allow for children to take their phones to school. But there are restrictions that are placed on them. For instance, you cannot use your phone during class time. You can only use it after 4:40 and on the weekends. And everybody is told to register their phone, the make of the phone, all the specifications of the phone, and they are handed over, say, to a custodian who has everybody's phone. So whenever you take your phone, it's like you sign in to get your phone, you sign it out and then you sign it back in, type of situation.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of a monitoring system
Yes.
of it, yes.
Well, let us look at the advantages, and one of it is flexibility, because you can learn from anywhere. The child is able to learn from
Absolutely.
anywhere.
Yes.
So this access is, I mean, this is key for me, because getting kids into a classroom, then getting them settled, then getting them to learn. So imagine on the go, they can access their notes or their homework and all assignments. This is quite key. And research
Yes.
as well. They can research, and this can make even conversations in the classroom much more interesting, because they are not looking to the teacher to give them the information.
Exactly.
You give them the topic, they go and research, and they come with different ideas,
Exactly.
which can be so rich. And it's not, I feel it would completely phase out the cram work,
Exactly, yes.
because there's a lot of cram work. Children do exams to pass them. Most of the children, if you asked them what they did last year, they don't remember.
last year,
Because
Last
5
1
minutes
month
after the
ago.
paper.
they don't
5
remember.
minutes after the
They
paper.
pass the paper. That's all that
that's it.
matters.
Yes.
They have crammed. They cannot apply the knowledge. It's just cram on, pass the paper. And education should have the ability to transform.
Yes.
If it doesn't have that ability, if you cannot take what you learn from school and apply it to real life scenarios, then are you really learning?
Exactly.
You're not. So, and then less workload for the teachers, because you don't have to pick all those books, open, mark. You can
Yes.
just send the files and you do digital marking.
Yes.
And people instantly.
Yeah.
So this is it works for the teachers as well, and also revision apps.
Yes.
You don't need to say, oh, do you remember what you did? Can you lend me your book? Like,
Get out
you
your
have
phones.
all these possibilities, and it really helps with it. And of course, pupil engagement as well. You can get to discuss. I mean, we see WhatsApp groups and Zoom and all this, so they can get to discuss. They don't actually have to be physically
Exactly.
in the classroom. But to track back to what we were talking about and what you were saying, Aggie, that we are not ready for this. Some people cannot afford smartphones. But I agree with Sarah, because it's time to move. If we don't move, like, the world is
The
going to
question
leave us
is how?
behind.
How are we going
exactly.
to?
And
So that
I feel
other
that
kids are not left behind.
I feel that the Ministry of Education did the right thing for now, because there are going to be a lot of loopholes. Like, they need to prepare. So, should they subsidize, like, desktops? Things like that. These are the conversations we should be having. Either desktops or tablets, mobile phones. But before we even get to that, Uganda does not have internet coverage all over the country.
That's
So
true.
we
so
should
many
be talking,
loopholes.
yes.
So
But
many.
yes, there are loopholes. But shouldn't we be looking to boost our infrastructure on internet reach across the country? We need
That
to
is
track back and do that across the country, so that there is wide internet coverage, even in rural areas.
Exactly.
Because you can't give someone a tab, and then there's no network where they are at. So what are they going to do with it?
But there's giving them a tab with already pre-installed programs, or exams or whatever already in that
Yes.
gadget, in the tablet. That could also solve the issue of internet, where everything has already been installed into the gadget. It's a computer, either the flash disk or hard drives, or
Yes.
the phone, or whatever the case may be. Or they could be other systems where you enter a code and then you get all this information. You don't need airtime, you don't need data. All that can be done, but then again, it all goes back down to the groundwork being done. The thing is, we don't have the luxury to say there is a problem, we need a solution. That is the point blank period. We need solutions. We do not need excuses, because we are already lagging behind, so far behind. There isn't time to say we are not ready. We have to be progressive, and as we find the problem, we find the solution as it goes, as opposed to just, because now our education system is already very backward. I'm sorry to say. It really is, and a lot of it is not even applicable. That is why we have so many people on the streets of Kampala, graduated, PhDs, masters, degrees,
with no practical skills,
don't have jobs because none of that has been implemented. They have not showed them how to implement that education into your everyday life. Many people walk around and say my degree is useless. That is not true. They've just not been taught how to use that information in your everyday skills. I wish we could apply the systems that we were taught in university if it is started in our secondary school.
Yes.
Because in university, the lecturer doesn't have time to start shouting with people. We'll sit down, stop talking, write for me noisemakers. No, the lecturer comes and says, these are the topics for this semester. On this day, we are going to have discussions on topics 1, 2, 3, 4. It would save the children a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then it would also help them apply critical skills where they don't have to, like you said, Sandra, have to cram an answer, where everybody can rationalize whatever the topic is. We need to have more discuss questions.
I totally agree with that. And Miss Caroline Masinde, a primary 4 teacher at Ntinda Primary School, said it would be difficult to teach learners with more advanced gadgets. A child with a more advanced smartphone compared to what I own as a teacher will definitely start despising me because the parents are richer and they can afford state-of-the-art phones.
Now we are getting off the point here. Now teachers are trying to feel inferior.
But I'm honestly not opposed to this initiative. I feel like it's good. But as Uganda, because we have a tendency of, bringing policies and starting on 50%, they need to go back to 0. Start with, is Wi-Fi accessible to all schools, to all students? Can everyone access a tab? Can everyone access a smartphone so that they don't leave any kids out? Honestly, I'm not opposed to this whole initiative. I only feel like let everyone be included. Let no kids be left behind. Because we'll see where some kids are we saw some kids getting promoted while others weren't. Like you'd go to school like, oh, you didn't learn, you didn't learn during the pandemic, while others learned, so you'll have to go back to P3 while the others are going to P4 because you're just underprivileged, if that's the word. So honestly, to ground zero, start from ground zero, eliminate all those loopholes of no Wi-Fi accessibility, no tab accessibility, let them improvise in whatever way they can so that at the end of the day, everyone is, everyone feels.
Unfortunately, life is not fair like that.
But it should be.
Time waits for no man. Have you heard that statement?
Time waits for no
and we're already 2 years behind.
So what happens to those underprivileged kids? I'm so inclined that way.
Well, let's look at the social media reactions to our tweet. And City Times says, unless you want them to grow before they actually grow, that boy will start messing around. That girl will start doing women's things. And Vaccinated Muzinyi says, yes, because there are actually some things they'll discover that teachers won't teach them. However, content should be limited as they are prone to reach into adult content. And Helen Mumbe says, personally, it's a no for me because some parents can't afford that. And secondly, they can't focus like for real. They can't. All over just at home, it's a burden. Kati, how about school? Adam Muramuzi says, yes, he's for kids should have smartphones at school. But well, that was all we had for you on our views regarding this topic. But please head on down to our social media pages and let us know what you think. Are you yay or nay? Should kids have smartphones at school? We'd love to hear from you. Well, that was all from me and the ladies here on Our Views, but stay at sea. We'll see you in a bit. Don't blink.
I hope you're having a wonderful time with us right here on Sunrise at Sea on CTV. Well, unfortunately, the show has come to an end, but it's Friday. So that is a plus. I hope that you definitely enjoy your weekend. Take your time off to have conversations with the people that you love. That is your friends, your family, your children. Please, your children, let's talk to your children, and please make more time for them. Yes, I know they may be distracted with school, their gadgets, their friends, but as a parent, take time to get to know your child. Use that weekend as an opportunity to bond with them. You know, do something exciting with them, or do housework with them this weekend. Don't sleep and let them do all the chores. Get involved as well. From the ladies and I, have a great weekend. Be blessed. Don't forget to follow SOPs. Wash your hands, social distance, wear your mask. Until next week on Monday, same time, same place. That is from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Stay hooked and keep on watching CTV.